Well, we live in a day and age where innovation is abound. We live in a day and age where the film industry is becoming a thing of the past. It took quite a while for the industry to even adapt the editing paradigm of digital. Last year, I got a kick out of the fact that Michael Kahn, who was Steven Spielberg's great editor for years and years and years, finally edited on digital when they worked on Tintin. Digital also has opened the door for us in visual effects. Jim Cameron was really the first person to use digital effects to help tell a story. That was with The Abyss in 1989. In 1991, Jim turned to digital visual effects again for Terminator 2. In that film, we think of it nowadays that it has so many effects in it. The fact is, I think they had 26 digital effect shots, and everything else was a combination of live action. When you compare that to today, with a film like Avatar, which we just finished, that had over 2,000 digital effects, you can see how digital technology is evolving in our industry. It was not until this century that digital technology went into the film production side of things. When George Lucas, again, trying to be a pioneer, filmed Phantom Menace with digital cameras. This was the first time any mainstream film had ever used digital technology to film its production. His goal at the time was not just to film the movie digitally, but also to exhibit it digitally. But the exhibition community was not ready for that. They had already paid for their projectors, and their consumer could not see a difference between digital projection and film projection. So their attitude was why change? Well, in 2002, it all began to change. We, Jim Cameron and myself and a few others, organized a showing of 3D material at Show West, the industry's leading trade show. We had George Lucas there, we had Robert Rodriguez, we had Bob Zemeckis, we had Peter Jackson piped in digitally, and we presented over 30 minutes of digital 3D films. It was the first time that the exhibition community began to see a reason to make a change. No longer would the consumers have to watch 3D movies on anamorphic glasses where frankly everything really looked like caca. They were able to really see quality 3D for the first time. And this was a driving factor in the impetus to roll out digital projection. But it was very slow to happen. As in many cases, you have to deal with what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Well, in 2005, we decided to be the chicken and go for Avatar. We've been waiting to do Avatar for a while. Jim had written it 10 years before that date. And we were waiting for technology to catch up with telling the story that Jim wanted to tell. People get confused when I say that. They think that technology might be the 3D we were waiting for. We weren't waiting for 3D. We didn't even know about 3D then. They might think it's creating the world of Avatar. It was not. What was important to us was creating the close-up. Because as we come in a more technologically advanced society, we can never forget that what storytelling is about and what movies are about are the personal stories and the personal journeys that our characters go on. So we, in fact, were waiting for the close-up to get to where we needed it to be. We created a whole new paradigm on how to attack this production. In the past, we looked at what people had done with what they referred to as motion capture. But to us, motion capture had always been missing one very key letter in front of it, an E, for E-motion capture. So we turned that whole paradigm on its head, and rather than having people wear reflective markers on their faces when we captured their performances, we actually had our actors wear a camera that was in front of their face that photographed them. This way, we can interpret that image on a frame-by-frame, almost a pour-by-pour level to drive what we believe was a higher fidelity performance. On top of that, we had Jim Cameron directing the movie. We wanted to create a director-centric paradigm, where in the past, technology is often a limiting factor. We wanted technology to be an enabling factor. So we created what we call virtual production, where Jim would actually go out into what we call the volume, where the actors were performing, and he had a virtual camera in his hands. Now, this was not a photographic camera. It didn't record anything. It was a digital. It sent ones and zeros back to a computer. The computer sent back to it an image that appeared on the screen. And when Jim would look at the actor standing right in front of him, he wouldn't see the actor. He would see their CGI character, at a low 1990s video game resolution. And as he moved the camera around the stage we were on that was very barren, he wouldn't see the barren stage. He would see the world that those characters were in. And this enabled him to make the movie. I brought a little clip to show you some behind the scenes to sort of put this in perspective, so we can run that clip.
Okay, ready, and action!
I think the thing that people need to keep very strongly in mind is that this is not an animated film. These actors did not just stand at a lectern and do a voice part, and then animators went off for the next 2 years and created the entire physicality of their performance.
The most exciting thing is, it is my performance. This thing walks and talks and acts like me. It's my interpretation.
Every nuance, every tiny bit of the performance that you see on the screen was created by the actors. They had to run, they had to leap, they had to fight, they had to do all the things that you see them doing in the film. And that's where the power of the performance comes from.
It's not just we're capturing emotion, we're trying to capture what's the intent of the actor.
What CGI technology does is it replaces prosthetics. Actors can now play any character that's designed in the computer without going through hours and hours of makeup. And what we get is their performance coming through the CGI character. Just like you would get Eric Stoltz's performance coming through in The Mask, you get Zoe Saldana's performance coming through in Nick Fury.
You have a strong heart. No fear. But stupid. Ignorant like a child.
So that gives you a little bit of a glimpse of the technology that we used on the film. We wanted to make the movie in 3D. And we hoped that by the time that the movie was out in the theaters, that we would have maybe 1,000 theaters in North America that could be in 3D and maybe 150 domestically, internationally. We went out and started to service the market. We had to look ahead. We kept doing presentations time and time again, dating back to 2006 all the way to just a few months before the movie opened. And I'm thrilled to say that by the time we were done with what I refer to as our dog and pony show, and I was always the dog and pony show, but we were up to over 3,000 theaters domestically and over 4,500 3D screens, all digital, internationally, which is really remarkable. And it just tells you where the marketplace is going and the digital evolution is really upon us. 3D, the way we look at 3D, and I think 3D ultimately is going to become ubiquitous in everything we do. I think it's going to be on all of our screens. I don't think it's just going to be limited to the in-theater. I think it's going to be in television. I think it's going to be on our mobile devices. I think it's going to be on our computer screens. If you think about it right now, whether you're on the Windows platform or the Macintosh platform, it's really the poor man's version of 3D, where we layer things in planes, but it's a fake 3D. 3D is ultimately going to be there. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be overnight, but the evolution to color for film wasn't overnight either. In the 1930s, we had color films, but it really wasn't until the late 1960s, early 1970s that color films became ubiquitous. Now, it's interesting if you look at what the impetus was for that. I believe the impetus was color television. That suddenly you were getting something in your home that the theaters had to compete with. Filmmakers could no longer do movies in black and white when other people were getting something in their homes that was better. So films went to color. I think the same evolution is going to happen with 3D. Why? Because it is a more immersive experience. If you've seen Avatar, we don't look at 3D as gags coming off the screen. We look at it as a window into a world. And I think no matter what medium you're working in, that's what you want to do. You want to immerse your audience in the story you were trying to tell. Whether it's a documentary, whether it's a drama, whether it's a comedy, or whether it's a big action movie. I think all of those things are the same. We need to view technology as an opportunity, not as a threat. But we have to understand that technology is the ends to a means and not the other way around. Technology is about letting us tell stories that could not be told before. And that's really what I think Avatar has done more than anything else. It has inspired filmmakers, Steven Spielberg, Peter Jackson, and others, to tell stories that they could not figure out how to tell them in the past. But by using a production paradigm like you just saw, they're able to do movies like Tintin. They're able to take movies like The Hobbit in a different direction. Digital technology is now available to anybody. And it's a lot easier than when I was growing up, and we have struggled to find a 16mm Bolex camera to make a movie. People can now go out and get a digital camera or a prosumer camera, really for next to nothing, or can certainly borrow one. As we talked about the nonlinear editing, no longer do you need moviolas or complicated film editing. You can edit at home and create products. Websites like YouTube and companies such as MOFilm are creating avenues of distribution for content. And I think that's very exciting. But people oftentimes ask me the reverse, if I think it is a threat to the film industry that these things are happening. My answer is no. But it is a challenge to us. It is a challenge to us to continue to innovate. It is a challenge to us, just like we had to face the challenge of television, we had to face the challenge of cable, we had to face DVDs and VHSs and the likes. But I believe that it's human nature to seek out the communal experience. There is something special about going into a theater, having the lights go down, and a movie coming up and immersing you into that world. I'm excited about the opportunities that the digital future holds. The internet could be the breeding ground for the next James Cameron or the next Steven Spielberg. And digital technology is unlocking the door, as I said before, to stories that could not be told. It is also introducing a change in how we market our movies and how we approach that. On Avatar, we had mobile partners that went out there and presented trailers and behind-the-scenes material on mobile devices. The now effect is something that came into big play as Avatar started coming out. And people were worried that we didn't have marketing material in the field 8 months in advance of the movie, 10 months in advance of the movie. Jim and I sat back and we said, we're in a different day and age. What we need 20th Century Fox to do is open the movie to a large enough number where people can then talk about it and spread the word, because you can stand at the end of the day based on the product that you create. When I was doing Dick Tracy and we finished that film, Warren Beatty asked me an interesting and what I thought was an awkward question. He asked me what I thought was my best attribute as a producer. I gave him 3 wrong answers. And then he finally said to me that he thought my best attribute as a producer was that I dreamed about the movie every night. And he knew this, he said, because I would come in with ideas the next day about the movie. Well, it has been said that a dream with courage is innovation. A dream without courage is a delusion. Don't put limitations on yourself. Push yourself. Take those chances. You need to have the courage to fail. As Jim Cameron recently said, failure has to be an option in art, because art is a leap of faith. And whatever you're going to do, failure is an option, but fear is not. So go out there and dream and innovate and do. Thank you very much.